Question. Dear Kim, I have MCAS, mast cell activation syndrome, and because of that I can have extreme reactions to food, environmental factors, bee stings, etc. I try not to develop psychology on top of that, just like you said. I actually said in another video that sometimes we can have a physical condition we're dealing with. It may not be health, it may be something else, but now we are developing, we are allowing the ego and the subconscious self to develop a drama on top of that outer condition, and it only makes it more difficult for us to be free of it. They believe the cause of MCAS is a trauma of some kind. I think in my case it is a birth trauma. I choked during my birth, and after that there was not the physical and emotional warmth and care my body needed. I'll skip a few things. Since my birth, all my cells are afraid, and my first line of defense of my immune system, my mast cells, do behave like soldiers at the border who shoot at every sound or movement they detect. I want to solve this problem on a causal level. I think my traumatic birth and my development in the womb, my mother was a heavy smoker and got medicine to prevent a miscarriage, allowed spyware to be installed at a causal level. It could also be a conscious choice of my soul to have this problematic start at life and all the problems that came out of that. My south node is in Aries and my north node is in Pisces. My health issues led me to the spiritual path at a young age, and it learns the lessons of patience, love, and humility. A fragile body is the perfect tool to learn this lesson. I'm 55 now, and I think it is time to reclaim my health. I think I learned the lessons my anxious cells wanted to teach me. So my question is, what can I do to change my blueprint at a causal level, or do you have another take on this? Well, I'm not, as I've said before, not really an expert on physical health. I haven't studied it very much, so I can only give you advice based on my background and what I know, and that is more the psychological stuff. But I will say that there are several people out there who have developed this knowledge, and they're scientists that develop this knowledge that there's a connection between the physical and the psychological. And I have one book here, The Genie in Your Genes, by Dawson Church, and I have another one by Bruce Lipton, Spontaneous Evolution. And there are other scientists out there who are talking about this, the connection between the psychological and the physical. So I think I would advise you to look for that. There are also some healing modalities that talk about this. I haven't really used them myself, so I can't advise you directly on it. But what I can tell you is that when you're describing that you had a traumatic birth in this lifetime, that immediately to me suggests that in this lifetime you chose, I've said this before we come into a lifetime, we meet with our spiritual teachers. And we are making a life plan. And part of that life plan is what we want to overcome in our psychology. And another part is the gift we want to give to the world. So when I hear that you deliberately chose, because I think you chose this, to have difficulties at birth, it immediately leads me to what I've talked about in several videos, the cosmic birth trauma when we first came to Earth. I have a whole series called Avatar Psychology, where I talk about there were a large group of people who volunteered to come to Earth. And we came from natural planets where you don't have the kind of diseases, for example, that you have on Earth. And so it was often a very big shock for us to just come into the density of Earth, the density of a physical body. At the same time, we were often exposed to a deliberate attack by certain dark forces, fallen beings, as I call it. And again, this is explained in my series about Avatar Psychology. And so this gave us a trauma for coming to Earth. And the Ascended Masters have explained this, and they call it the cosmic birth trauma, because it was when we came to Earth the first time. And so what the Masters have explained is that especially if you're in your last embodiment and you are planning to ascend either at the end of this lifetime or in a lifetime after this one, you have put in your divine plan you want to deal with this birth trauma. And I talk about it in the Avatar Psychology series, but there's also a book that the Ascended Masters have released through me. It's called Healing Your Spiritual Traumas. And there's teachings in there, but also some practical tools. For example, Mother Mary in the book gives a tool for how you're mentally stepping back in time and connecting to a traumatic situation in the past. It may not be, in the beginning, it may not be your birth trauma, but it can be other situations that you need to clear away first. And so eventually you'll get down to this, the first trauma you received after coming to Earth. And when you look at this and resolve it and let it go, you will feel an incredible release. You will feel so relieved, so free, so whole, really. I have gone through it myself. I know quite a number of Ascended Master students who have gone through this, and it's really a great, great relief. So to me, this sounds like that's what you plan to do in this lifetime. And because the birth trauma is so deep, it can affect the cells. Because it's like you come from a natural planet, and on a natural planet you've never been deliberately attacked. And so now you're coming here to Earth with the best of intentions. You simply want to help raise the Earth. And you are somewhat aware that there are these beings that will feel threatened by us coming. But you can't really imagine what they're going to try to do to you. So what they can do is expose us to this really deep pain, almost a total pain, because it's not just a physical pain, it's also psychological pain. And it's such a shock to us that it creates this almost extreme defense reaction. Like the person describing, my cells do behave like soldiers at the border who shoot at every sound or movement they detect. And that's because when you're so shocked by this that you are basically deciding, I never want to experience this again. And it's not necessarily the outer condition, it's that you never want to experience being shocked by this, being shocked in this way. You're really taken aback by the shock of this. And so you're deciding you never want to experience this again. So you're creating a subconscious self that I talk about in a lot of my videos. But this is what you could call the primal self in relation to Earth. And it's basically this, you want to defend yourself against ever having this kind of a situation again where you're so shocked. So you're always trying to anticipate what could happen. And that can give you that extreme immune response. The other thing I would say here is that it's very important when you're talking about physical healing to realize that the physical body does not exist alone. There's basically really no condition in the physical body that doesn't have a psychological component, because, as I explained in several of my videos, including my video about how the world was created, there are 4 levels of the material universe. And so in our minds, we have 4 levels, or we could say we have 4 lower bodies. So we have the physical body, the next level obviously emotional, then the mental, then the identity level, and then beyond that, of course, is the spiritual realm. So what happens is that we are conscious, we are alive, because there's a stream of energy that comes from our higher selves, the I Am Presence, which resides in the spiritual realm. And the energy flows first into our identity body. And it's colored, it takes on a certain form or matrix by the sense of identity we have at that level. And then it flows into the mental, and here it takes on more of a coloring by the beliefs and the knowledge we have at the mental level. And then finally, then it flows into the emotional level, where it also is colored by, for example, if we have a huge accumulation of anger energy, the energy from the I Am Presence can be colored by this, lowered in vibration by this. And then after that, it's expressed as physical actions or as the health of our physical bodies. So you see how if you really are to heal the physical body and the cells here, you have to heal the three higher bodies. And that means that often it's necessary to start with the emotions, because the emotions are so turbulent. Many people, when we start looking into psychology, we can be overwhelmed by emotional energy. It can be scary. I've seen people who decided to go into therapy, they were overwhelmed by the emotions, and they just decided, never again, I'm not going to touch this stuff. But if you work through it, you can start looking at the mental beliefs and finally your deeper sense of identity, which, as I said, relates to this birth trauma, because when you came to Earth and were exposed to this trauma, you made a decision about how you see yourself in relation to Earth. And that's really the decision you need to uncover and let go of. So often, as I explain in several of my videos, including in the Spiritual Toolbox playlist, the best way to deal with emotions is to clear the energy. For example, anger has a lower vibration than love. So it's a fear-based energy, and we can invoke spiritual light from the Ascended Masters to transmute the energy in our emotional bodies. This means all of a sudden the energy is less intense, it's not so scary or unpleasant to deal with emotions. So then you can look at your emotions, you can look at your patterns in your emotions. Why do I feel this way? Like the person is talking about, you feel, there's a certain fear, and there's a certain tendency to react very strongly to, food, environmental factors, species, things, etc. And that's because, again, you are very suspicious of the physical realm, because you have the trauma that it can mean pain. So once you get beyond this, you can start seeing patterns, and then you can say, why am I reacting this way? What is the belief I have at the mental level? And then after you uncover some of those beliefs you have, you can go deeper to the identity level. There are some people that may be able to go directly to the identity level, and that's part of what these exercises in healing your spiritual traumas are designed to do. But in many cases, we have to at least start clearing the energy in the emotional body. And so that's what I would recommend. I just want to comment on this, that the person is saying, I think my traumatic birth and my development in the womb allowed spyware to be installed at a causal level. And that's something I just don't believe in. I don't find this credible. I understand the experience, but I would never express it that way. What I would say is that you have a subconscious self in your identity body. And it goes back to this original birth trauma. It goes beyond the birth trauma in this lifetime. So you could call that a certain spyware, but it's not really a mechanical thing as such. It's not something somebody else installed. It's actually something you created, this primal self. And you need to dissolve it. You need to let it die. But in order to do that, you have to see it. And again, there's no blame here. You understand? We were all exposed to this trauma. We all reacted in our individual ways to it. And it was inevitable. I mean, you cannot be exposed to this kind of trauma without reacting to it. And it's just a matter of, as the person is saying, I'm 55 now, I think it's time to reclaim my health. Yes, that's what we have to do at some point, all of which we have to be willing to look at the trauma. Because for many lifetimes we haven't looked at it because it was so painful. So there comes that point where we have to say, it's time to look at it. And the person is actually describing this very well, because I did this myself. Now, I didn't have the physical problems this person is talking about, nowhere near that kind of thing, but I still had a psychological issues that I was dealing with. And I came to a point where I realized, okay, I've been dealing with this psychological issue my whole life, probably for many lifetimes. I know it's unpleasant. It's going to be unpleasant to look at it. It's going to cause me pain to look at it. But would I rather continue with this pain that is constant, or would I rather take a sharp pain now and work through it so I get rid of the constant pain? Because I realized I couldn't get rid of this constant pain without looking. And of course, my subconscious self was screaming, don't look, because the ego and the subconscious self, they don't want you to look at them. And so they want to project at you that it's so painful or so dangerous that you shouldn't look. And what you would get instead is you get this constant pain, but the problem is you've gotten used to that because you had that for lifetimes. So you're used to that background pain. You can deal with that. And that's why they're trying to project at you, oh, you can't deal with the sharp pain of looking at this. So I came to a point where I simply had to decide this. It was very helpful for me to go into therapy, but what I'm talking about with the birth trauma really came much later than that. But still, there has to be that decision where you decide, I am willing to take a temporary, intense pain to overcome the long-term dull pain that I've gotten used to, because I want to get over that pain. I don't want to drag it with me. And that is no doubt part of your divine plan in this lifetime. As I said, the other aspect of your divine plan is that you want to bring a gift, and that could very well be to help other people deal with the same issues that you've dealt with, both the physical, but especially the deeper psychological issues. So once you work through this birth trauma yourself, you may be able to help others. And who knows what comes out of that I can't envision, because this is something you might be able to see, but you won't see it before you have healed the trauma.